to welcome Milton Smith here at OWASP AppSec Research. He has been volunteering, or let's say, Milton is the senior product manager for Java security for security for the Java platform at Oracle.
Correct.
Is it correct?
Yeah.
The description, because it's kind of lengthy.
Yeah. Security PM's good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. He volunteered to come to our conference and tell us a little bit about the current state and what's going to happen in the future with Java with respect to security. He also has been talking at Black Hat, as far as I understood.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but he's not talking about client security only, but also about other stuff, I think.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So really what this is, thank you. So here I am right here. So we're going to talk a little bit about really around our policies and why we do some of the things we do that are perhaps not clear to folks, as well as talk about some of our recent progress in Java security and remediation, things like that, as well as some of the new features that we've been delivering on, which I don't think a lot of folks are aware of. So, I think that's a reasonable place to start. Anyway, here's my role. I think the point, I know that this stuff is covered in the program, so I'm not going to go over it a lot, but there's a lot of folks that do security on the Java team. I'm not the only one. Probably like many of you, I'm an influencer on the team. Developers don't report directly to the security guy. I have to fight the good fight, just like many of you perhaps. Now, one thing I would say, though, is I do get a lot of support. So I work directly with VPs in engineering, as well as engineering leadership for the teams that develop crypto and things like that. So here we go. So we're going to talk a little bit about Java. One thing when Oracle asked me to come help out with security leadership for Java, I said, oh, sure, Java, great. But what is Java? I guess I'm, perhaps like many of you, I'm an application developer at heart, so I'm used to using Java SE and Eclipse and things like that. But actually, there's a lot of things to Java, and not understanding where everybody is at in their understanding, I figured I would just kind of briefly cover some of those things. So Java is a combination of different things. So Java is a specification that really is paperwork and things that describe what is Java, right? And if you were to build Java, what Java must conform to. And so that is specifications driven largely by the Java community process. And Java community process, which is an open process that anybody can participate in public, drives the implementations. And the implementation of Java would be like the compiler, JavaC, and JavaDocs, all that sort of stuff. Really the thing that implements the specification. From a implementation perspective, much of Java is open source as well, the OpenJDK project, which you may or may not have seen. But if you want to start working on your own version of Java SE, you can do that. You can go to the OpenJDK project and decide you're going to go on your own and just download the whole project and create your own version of Java. It's up to you. Or you can contribute to what's there. So maybe a little bit about where Java is at, right? A lot of us, perhaps some are .NET users out there. I can't assume everybody's Java user, but Java is deployed on about 97% of desktops. You can see the mobile platforms, very significant. Television sets, about 1 billion downloads a year, 9 million developers. So it's, and again, I just grabbed these because being an apps guy, I wanted to know, okay, well, really, how big is Java? I know I use it a lot. I deploy things onto app servers like Tomcat, but how are other people using it? And in fact, there's a lot of different ways in Java is used, and And now that I'm really part of the creation of now that I'm part of the platform team, I see all sorts of different innovative uses. I'm getting Java to run on $35 Raspberry Pi computers. It's pretty amazing all the different uses people come up with. One of the things here before I start talking about all the things that we've been doing is I guess I would just share a little bit about some Java security news here. So not long ago, our chief architect, Mark Reinhold, published a blog that really talked about delaying JDK 8. So a lot of you probably know that we've had some different security issues with Java, and we've been really sort of hunkering down to get those addressed, and has even pushed back the release of JDK 8 while we get those things cleaned up. And so anyway, this is a message that our chief architect, communicated to the public to let people know. So what are we doing in Java security? Well, it's pretty simple, really. We're accelerating remediation and crunching through backlog, getting bugs fixed, things like that, as well as developing new security features to keep the platform safe. So Java was originally came out around 1995, and of course the threats and things that were in 1995 are far different than they are today, right? So this is really about bringing Java up to speed. Defending Java applets, I guess really that one I kind of see plugging into the other two, but really Java applets has emerged as an area of concern. We've noticed more exploits and things in that area, so we've been focusing on that a lot. So now we'll kind of segue a little into a little bit on security policies. So the policies that we have at Oracle apply to all Oracle products, and Java being a platform, one of those applies as well. So the three larger areas for the policies are really communications, remediation, as well as integration with the lifecycle, and so these are kind of some of the key areas around those three larger areas that we'll talk a little bit more about. So in regards to communications, we have a lot of ways that we let the public know what's going on. So whenever we have security alerts, that's one of, I guess that would be our security hot fixes. And we have RSS feeds and things that you can subscribe to for security alerts, so that when they come out, you're appraised immediately. Critical patch advisories, those are our normal security patches for Java. And those are also available via RSS feeds and things like that. E-blasts are just email distribution lists that you can subscribe to. And there's a lot of blogs as well. So there's a security assurance blog that is written by a colleague of mine, Eric Maurice. You might want to take a look at that. A lot of times when there's CPU releases and security alerts and things like that, he will kind of capture, I guess, more of a summary of it. So whenever we publish CPU critical patch updates, there's documentation that we ship with that, which kind of describes a little bit about the vulnerabilities that are being addressed and which categories they fall into and things like that. So there's very technical documentation, whereas Eric's blog is kind of a little more human readable, I guess. And then the Java PM blog, which is something new for us, and you don't have to try to Google all this stuff right now. So I've included a bunch of links at the end of the presentation, and I'll share the presentation with the OWASP team, and that way you can just refer to those links. So in regards to communications, a lot of people ask me, well, can you tell me a little bit more about this vulnerability that you just had, and where is it, and okay, now you've told us, and can you share the POC with us that shows us how to, it's like We would love to be, we are very open, as I had said in the first few slides there. We are very open with our source and open JDK. We typically do not talk about vulnerabilities before we've actually checked in the fixes, right, and made them available to everybody, because if we shared vulnerability information with a select few and not with everybody else, it might put the community at risk, right? So correcting, corroborating articles, again, yeah, that provides a lot more information to attackers. So if they want to say things about Java in computer world or whatever, pick your favorite, tech magazine, we really can't comment on that. A lot of times those articles will come out in the press and people will come to me and say, hey, Milton, what about this article that I read over here? Can you tell me about that? And it's like, I can't really do that. I can't say whether it's true or whether it's false, or and the other thing is, a lot of times I can't even really say that this thing that they're talking about is the same thing that we're publishing a CPU about, because a lot of times news articles in particular like to they're just short on the engineering details, right? And that's what I'm all about. I'm part of a development group. It's our job to build and to fix Java and keep it safe, and we run on engineering details. So if something doesn't have engineering details that we need, I really can't comment on it, so I don't. The other thing I would say is social media, commenting on social media that's flying around. If we engage, we definitely engage in social media, but I think if we, for the purposes of vulnerability, start chatting about things on social media, then it forces people to monitor social media in order to get Oracle news. And so I think the best place to communicate Oracle news is on an Oracle site. So I think all this boils down to is the way that we do things with our communication policy on communicating about alleged product vulnerabilities is that everybody gets this news at the same time, and it's precise and it's actionable. So I wanted to just kind of show, now this is really kind of a, not any particular SDLC methodology that I'm proposing. And I know when I've showed this in the past, I had somebody tell me, yes, Milton, and when I saw this come up, to me it looked old, because we do Agile, and to me that looks like waterfall. And so I guess I'm not trying to communicate waterfall over Agile or anything like that. This is really the process that we use for developing that I'm sharing with you. And it might not be appropriate for web apps, what you're doing, which, Agile processes would make a lot more sense if you're cloud apps, web apps, that sort of thing. But for a platform, things are different on a platform. And, our release cycles are quite a bit longer. And so this is really how we do things. And I've just kind of picked a few things because it's hard to jam everything into a slide here. But just to show that, we think about different things at different levels of the development process. I know there's a lot of security development lifecycle sort of stuff out there that you can choose from. Pick your favorite. But basically at the beginning of the life cycle, we'll look at the effort that engineering is doing and decide, try to make an assessment of what kind of risk that generates, and that controls whether we spend more or less time on what they're doing. Project review, we go ahead and review architecture documents with an eye on compliance. Peer review, we have engineers use different tools throughout their processes, probably like you would do, static analysis tools, things like that. We also have a lot of specialized tools that we've developed in-house ourselves. As you can imagine, working on a platform is quite different than working on an application. So, for example, an application you would be protecting for different business use cases and things like that. For a platform, we don't know how it's going to be used. How Java is used is up to you. And so defending that is a little bit different. You can imagine I've had people ask me too, well, Milton, do you use this commercial tool so-and-so to do your analysis? And we do use commercial tools to do analysis. We use open source tools like FindBugs and things like that. But we have to use a lot of specialized tools because, as you can imagine, some of the commercial tools do not support some of the forward-looking features that we're planning on building into Java. So things like, we'll say like lambdas or things like that that are coming up in future versions of Java are not probably supported in these tools, at least officially. All right. And then the other point here is that even, considering our engineering processes and how different tools and technologies, procedures touch the different phases of our development processes for Java, we have things that operate outside of the process. So we have all the security people and developers engaged in that process, but outside the process, we also have our, I recorded or wrote GPS there, that's our global product security team, which is more of a corporate security team. So whereas like myself, I'm a very senior individual contributor for security on the Java team, I by no means necessarily a big fish at Oracle, right? So there's a lot of security leadership on the corporate side, and we work closely with them. That's the global product security people, and they definitely have a lot of opinions about Java security and things like that. So they're outside the process and kind of have different checkpoints and engage us on our architectures and things like that. We have ethical hacking teams, which are outside the process as well, and will kind of kick the tires of Java and try different things and let us know what their results are, and we'll have our technical people look at those. We have a lot of training. Anybody that touches code on the Java team, probably like your companies, has to undergo some basic security training. We also have more specialized training so that when we have exploits, we typically have kind of this post-mortem procedure of what we call anatomy of an exploit, where we kind of have one of our senior technology leaders sit down and really kind of show how this, kind of a play-by-play of what happened for the developers, so that they can, perhaps, use that information to change what they're doing in the future. And then we have tech talks, which are just regularly scheduled technology discussions, and that also includes security. And I have one coming up here in September for the team I'm going to be talking about. So for remediation, we've got a lot of, so for remediation we use a system called Common Vulnerability Scoring System, CVSS. You may have, some of you might use it. I know governments sometimes use it. But it's a way to classify vulnerabilities based on risk, using sort of standardized metrics to come up with an aggregate score. If the lower the number is, the less riskier something is, the higher the number, the more risk. And it's just I would say, there are, as much as they try to make it structured, there's always a little wiggle room in there. Why is this a 5.5 versus maybe a 6? But I think a general, system for communicating risk quickly and a conversation between two engineers is a healthy thing to have. So we use CVSS to do that. We have a special vulnerability triage team. Whenever reports are reported to Oracle, we don't just assume that they're true. We have to actually go in and check them out. At that time that they're checked out, if they're confirmed positive, they are assigned a CVSS score and then go off for remediation to be scheduled. And then, of course, if we have a higher risk item, high CVSS score, that would take priority over lower items, because we remediate things just like you do, perhaps based on risk. Fix the highest, most critical things first. And then the way that we deliver those things is, as I had mentioned before, so CPU, you thought you knew what a CPU was. Well, if you were at Oracle, you'd be wrong, because the CPU is a critical patch update. So that's our regular security patches. For the Java team, we've been doing, I think we've been on a 3 sort of delivery per year schedule, but we are now moving to Oracle's delivery schedule of 4 per year. And so perhaps, thinking about it, well, from my greedy security perspective, I get 1 more slot I can deliver fixes to, so I like that. I think from a customer perspective, those folks that are using Java, if you were scheduling outages for your data centers and things like that, well, now the Java delivery is on the same time as the delivery for all your other products, so maybe you only have to schedule a single outage, so there's probably some benefits there. For security alerts, those are emergency security patches or hot fixes. They're not something regular. Those are where we see exploitation in the wild and we need to come out with something very quickly. And that's the mechanism that we use to do that. We don't like to do that as much where we don't have to, because Java is, whenever we remediate something, we don't just fix it on the platform, it's reported. So if we see it on Windows, we also check Mac too. Sometimes what's on Windows is a vulnerability on Mac as well. So we check different platforms as well as also different versions. So if we see something on 7U25, we're also going to check Java 6 and some of the older versions of Java too. So if you have support for Java for older versions, you would get that fix as well. So this is just a little bit about how the critical patch update works. Patches alternate between a non-CPU and CPU, so that the non-CPU is where we deliver software features and things like that, whereas a CPU is really just security features. So we're trying to limit our security fixes to only introducing security features. Security vulnerability fixes. And the idea is that we understand that when you apply a security patch, there's always a chance there's operational risk with any patch that you install. And so by limiting a CPU to only security fixes, the idea is that it reduces your operational risk. Now I would say, so this year we've kind of bent the rules on some of that, but this year has been an extraordinary year for Java, right? And we've had to make some changes to keep the community secure, and in the best interest of doing that, we've used CPUs in a few cases to also deliver key security features. That's not something that we like to do, though. Okay. CPUs are generally published in advance too. We've had more CPUs this year. For example, in February we had 2 CPUs back to back, which creates a little pain on data centers that have to install 2 of them very quickly. We understand that. I think from a platform developer perspective, we have to deliver the fixes that it takes to keep the community safe. So that's what we'll do. We don't necessarily, dictate when those fixes are installed. Each company has to make their own, or organization has to make their own operational choices. Sure. That really, you asked the easy question. So, not every, so we have policies that dictate our remediation, and, but quite frankly, some things are easy to fix and other things are more difficult to fix, right? The other thing is, as I had mentioned before, not only do we just fix it on the platform that it's reported on, but we have to fix it, across all platforms and older versions of Java as well. What might be considered a very easy fix actually could take much longer to fix, to address it systemically, right? Okay, so now we'll just kind of really talk more about the progress. So we talked a little bit about policy, which I like to cover just because it helps people understand why we do some of our things, because if I don't talk about that, people always ask at the end of the presentation, why do you do this? So I think it perhaps is more satisfying to cover that. Okay, so for remediation highlights, Java applets running at in browsers. I think that's one of the areas that has emerged as something more concerning that have been exploited more often. And as well, so that's one of the areas that we focus on. But I think the thing is even though that we focus on Java running in the browser, we care about all areas of Java that would be vulnerable. So if there are vulnerabilities that affect the server, we're interested in those. It's just that we have focused on the browser. And the other thing I think the data that will show here is that there have been some significant progress over the course of the last year. So this is just this information comes from information that's publicly available. If you look at the CPU notes that are published for each release, at the bottom there's what we call a risk matrix. And the risk matrix shows it lists out each vulnerability that's being addressed by the CPU. And it lists the subcomponent that that vulnerability impacts, if it's 2D graphics library or that sort of thing. And then the version of Java, a lot of the details. And so the interesting thing is you can go through those details and kind of tally things up, and so that's what I did. So one of the things I just looked at was remediated vulnerabilities per month. And this is kind of, this isn't necessarily specific. Not every release is included, but what I've tried to do is kind of show roughly the time across the bottom over the course of a year, and then a few milestones that would indicate, releases that might map to those years, which, you might be able to identify more with, and then remediated vulnerabilities up the left-hand side. So you could see, earlier last year, for 7U5, we were, remediating around, 15 or so for a 13 to 15 for a CPU. And that's what we think we could do at that time. And then, of course, it in the October-ish of 2012 ramped up to around 30, and then, of course, earlier this year, we're up to about 55 or so in 7U15. So we've really, that right there is from the web, and that shows progress working on what we've been doing here for the last year. This right here is kind of interesting. So as I had mentioned, if you go through the risk matrix and you look at these different subcomponent types, you can then go through and put everything into maybe an Excel spreadsheet and kind of do your little what ifs. And the one thing that I noticed is that the data does support our the applets in the browser, right? So on the left-hand side, we have deployment, which is the applet area. Libraries 2D, AWT, of course, is also down there. The thing that I noticed was Dash. I was not sure what that was, but Dash was coming up kind of high. But Dash is really, I guess, a kind of a catch-all, because there's some areas of Java that don't necessarily have a component subtype, which is what these things are. And so I just kind of looked up one because I wanted to see what that is, because it seemed to be a big bucket things we're going into. But there was some things that emerged, like JavaDocs, for example. JavaDoc is, doesn't really have a component subtype, so it's assigned this dash. Anyway, you can basically see that over on the left-hand side, that's where the, the applet picture emerges. And that's not to say that, some of those, 10 minutes? Okay, thanks. Try to go faster. Okay. So what we're going to cover now is a little bit on the security features that we've delivered on since last September or so. So if we start here, 7U10 in December, we added an enable-disable feature for Java, because prior to that it was not easy to just turn off Java, right? We had to tell people how to deactivate it, registry settings, different between Windows and Mac and different platforms, and it was hard to explain. So, I guess we could tell people to uninstall Java, but that's kind of brute force too. So we came up with enable disable. Anyway, easy way to do it now. Hard-coded best before date on JRE. What that is Java will now understand if it's running below the security baseline. So if a new CPU comes out, Java understands that it's old. It hasn't been patched. So when it communicates warnings and things to the user, it's going to create communicate warnings with maybe slightly more emphasis or higher risk than it did before, because it knows it's out of date. Java security slider, that's something else that we added in 7U10, which allows people to set their sort of appetite for risk operational versus security trade-offs for Java running in browsers. We added support for signing sandboxed applications in 7U21. So what that's about is, and actually that's, it's kind of a subtle but significant change that's caused some confusion, because prior to the change, signing also meant giving privileges. And really, signing is about establishing identity. And so what we've done is to separate the part of assigning identity of the code author to giving privileges. So now those are two separate things. Server JRE. Server JRE was really developed. For now, it just pulls plugin support out of Java. So if you were to deploy Server JRE on the server side, there's no plugin support, so there's no question about some of the vulnerabilities that might impact a plugin. Would they impact your server, that sort of thing. We also, in 7U21, removed support for low and custom on the security slider. What we discovered is after we added the slider, people wanted the setting of go back to Java the way it used to be, sort of thing. And we didn't want to do that, because we had noticed that people would kind of throttle Java back and be more vulnerable and then be exploited. So we removed the ability to kind of turn things back to the old ways. So dynamic blacklisting in 7U21 was a feature that we added. So we had some blacklisting capabilities, and what that is it allows us to, if there's a vulnerable jar, it allows us to blacklist that jar so that it can't be used with Java. The dynamic blacklisting capability allows us to update those blacklists daily for Java users. Previously, we could only update the blacklist when a new binary for Java was shipped. So now we have some more flexibility here. Yes?
How does that affect us building Java server applications or Java applets? How do we get that blacklist to affect our application? Nothing you really talk, is that something that's such an important concept that we'll hear more out of?
Yeah, it is actually. So you know what, right now, I think this is an important feature because it allows us, what we've been doing is really working with commercial software providers. So we'll say the scenario is they pushed out a new version of their product. They realize that their product has a jar with a vulnerability in it. So they would communicate to us what that is, and we kind of go through a process and we get that blacklisted and kills it everywhere. It's, I think dynamic blacklisting is far better than what was there before, but I still think it's not really where it should be, because in my mind it puts us kind of like in the position where we're the only CA that can, blacklist a certificate, so to speak, right? It's just not a very good position to be in. So I think one of the areas that we're looking into the future is, more of a distributed feature, which would allow anybody to blacklist their own. So if you, if you had discovered that, you had some vulnerable code out there, and now that code is out in the wild, you would then, there'd be some mechanisms to be able to blacklist your own. That's, it's still on the table at this point. We're discussing it, but that's kind of things that we're thinking about that would, empower people to police their own software. The other thing that we did for 7U25 is we added some We added some logic here to prevent jars from being repurposed. People would, if you had a financial app or something, you might not want the code that's running on your servers to be able to be run somewhere else. So we have some code here to prevent repurposing. Standardized revocation services in 7U25. So just as we're turning up the dials on code signing and signing for applets, we need standardized revocation services to be working. They had been part of Java for a while, but they were turned off by default. And I think when they were developed, there were some performance concerns when they were turned on. So really, before I had the team turn these on, we went back to the drawing board and kind of took a look at these things and, okay, thank you. Worked with some different CAs and things to try them out to see how, interoperability testing with CRL and OCSP services. And so those are basically the services when you go to blacklist a certificate, say somebody's signing some bad code and you want to turn that certificate off. This is what would do it on the client side for talking to those servers. Java uninstaller. This right here is an ongoing effort. What we've discovered is a lot of times bad guys like to target old versions of Java on desktops because old versions have known vulnerabilities. And so if you target those, you have a good chance of exploiting. So we're developing our software installs and things to clean up those old versions of Java that are out there. That's still a project. We have kind of a multi-step project. So right now, some of the installer does some cleanup, but then also at the end of an install, we drop users on an uninstaller page that can kind of clean up some things for Windows users. We're still not there yet. We have more work to do, but we're making some progress. Dynamic rule set, DRS, new feature for 7U40. So the early access is available today. You can download it and try it out. Effectively, DRS adds capabilities for enterprises to whitelist their corporate assets. So if you wanted to, block some of these malicious applets and things from exploiting your desktops, it'd be kind of, it's hard for enterprises to do that today, right? Because you just can't shut off port 80 and 443, right? That's not very tenable. So how do you let all that go through and only block the applets from the bad guys, right? So this is perhaps a way that enterprise users can do that. So what you can do is you can create a file that kind of mirrors your company policy. You can list the assets that you want your corporate desktops to be able to talk to. And then also the assets of perhaps partners. If you partner with other businesses and things, you can include those assets in there. You can take that configuration file, sign it, push it down to your desktops, done. So that feature is available in 7U40 to play with today. It's publicly available, but because it is early access still, until it actually comes out, we don't like people to deploy it in production. But go ahead and kick the tires and let us know what you think. The other thing is making some progress here. So our flagship conference is Java 1, and it's coming right up here at the end of September. I noticed in submitting last year for Java 1 to let people know who I am and kind of talk about security a little bit, that there was no place for me to put my track. I wasn't sure which track I submitted on, and finally I think I settled on core technologies. But the other thing I noticed in going through the program is there were a number of different security sessions, and they're not just all Oracle guys talking about security. It was people from different parts of the world, different user groups. And so then I thought, well, hey, there's a lot of emphasis on security. There's I'm here now, and so we should be calling it for what it is. Let's call all this security stuff security. So I asked the conference team, hey, can we have a security track just like we have core technologies and these other ones? And after some talking, they finally said, sure, yeah, if you want to lead it, go ahead. So I said, all right, well, sign me up. So I don't know anything about running a security track. I don't see myself as a conference promoter. I'm really a technical developer. That's my comfort zone, I guess. But I felt like, I've been a big OWASP proponent. I haven't okay, 2 minutes. I haven't spoken at OWASP everywhere or anything like that, but at the time, I just felt like, I'd kind of like to bring some of that same great stuff that we do here at OWASP, maybe to developers, because we're always saying as security professionals, wouldn't it be great if developers knew these things that we knew? So that's the idea of Java 1 here, is to kind of bring some of that security training to developers who may never otherwise attend a security conference. Okay, so I only have 2 minutes, so I'm just going to fly through this. This is like extra. These are all the links and good things that you can take a look at. So if you want to report vulnerabilities to Oracle, there's how you do it. New security features, you want to make some suggestions, you can send them there, or you can just send them directly to me too. That's fine. Java platform support. Yeah. So I get questioned on Java platform support all the time. Again, I'm really part of the development organization, so I don't know anything about sales, I don't know anything about support. I only bring this up because everybody asks about it. So I know, like, and when we deliver some of our fixes and things like that, sometimes we make some early things available to customers that have support. We publish that on the Oracle support site. So then the question comes up of how can I get it? So there it is. Java root certificate program. So we have roots in Java, like browsers have roots, and we do have a program if you want to get your root added to Java. Upcoming CPUs for a while there, and different things here that you can do to help keep people safe. And then again, these are all the links. That's it. That's all I've got. So I don't know if we have time for 1 or 2 questions, or where you want to go.
Certainly. So shoot, guys.
No, don't shoot. Ask your question. Yes. Do you want to get them on the microphone, or I don't know if it's being recorded, or?
The first question is how removing plugin on a server should secure it. Sorry, how removing plugin from server Java could secure the server when there is no browser there. I cannot understand this.
Yeah, well, that's correct. Okay, so this is where we get into, I think as a security professional, we understand a lot more about security than, the average public, right? And so some of these vulnerabilities that impact browsers, impact when you're running Java applets and browsers, really don't apply too much on the server side, but that's not necessarily clear to everybody that that's the case, because it's not clear to them perhaps that you need to be browsing to do these things, that sort of thing. But yes, because we don't typically browse on servers, these things don't typically have the same sort of impact. But by eliminating the plugin, it's easier for those people to understand.
Okay.
I just wanted to know the time frame for that dynamic rule set update that's currently in beta or whatever you said it
What's that?
was. Sorry, sounds like I'm loud. The time frame for that dynamic rule set update?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you look at the early access site, it'll provide all the different features that are in 7U40. I just highlighted this, the security things of interest. I believe the contents of the feature, the documentation for how to use it, and the delivery timeline for 7U40 is all online. If I remember right, it's mid-September. But I would really check the site for the official word. It might change a little bit.
In terms of your development lifecycle, your security development lifecycle, Microsoft has kind of become the de facto reference because they publish so much about it out there that everybody's reusing it. does Java have similar type vision of where they're going to go, and is this type of reference available publicly?
So a lot of the things that we have around policy are available online, and I've shared those in the presentation here, so you can see. I think it's actually quite unusual that a company would publish their security policies online, but that's what Oracle does. They also have some documentation on SDLC, so you might want to look that up. I would say, they're policy statements, though. They're not implementation, right? So, like, if you want to know about Microsoft's SDL, you can, buy a book, right? Oracle doesn't have a book that corresponds to that. But there is a lot of good information out there. We do have things like secure coding guidelines, things like that. So there are good published resources.
I have a question also. You're next.
We're all out of time.
Yeah, I know. But I can't let you go now.
Yeah.
I'm not a developer anymore. Well, but naively speaking, shouldn't it be easy? I mean, to get more security into your products. I don't know whether you do, so for example, static code analysis or code reviews. What's going on there?
So I think there's, so perhaps that's a two-part question, right? What are we doing with static analysis for Java? And yeah, there are definitely tools that we use. I guess we do more work with static analysis and fuzzers because we're developing a platform, right? So doing dynamic analysis for us really doesn't make a lot of sense. But we have lots of static analysis and custom fuzzers, font fuzzers, all sorts of different sort of fuzzers. For developers, we don't have like static analysis tools that we share with them, but there are a lot of good open source tools. Some of the open source tools that they could use, we use as well. And then, of course, there's a lot of really great commercial tools out there that they can use.
It's not somewhere in your product lifecycle or in your software development lifecycle.
Well, our software development lifecycle would apply to how we create our software, but we don't dictate how somebody else should create their software.
Yeah, well, I was talking about your software.
Okay, you're talking about our software. Yeah. So we, like I said, we do have some policies that drive our software development lifecycle, and we have static analysis tools and fuzzers, but we don't, I guess, go into detail about our static analysis tools, right, with the public.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last question.
Actually is related to what was asked just before, but was to get more information about the fuzzing that you are doing in your software development lifecycle. If you can share that, of course.
About
the fuzzing. So you said that you do static
fuzzing?
Analysis and you do also fuzzing.
Yeah.
In the testing phase, right? So
yeah.
If you can elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah, actually, so I can't elaborate, but there's others that have elaborated. So Mark Schoenfold is probably the best one to speak about that, and he's going to be at Java 1 speaking this year. I'm trying to remember if he has something on fuzzers, but I do, if I remember right, he has something from last year. So if you check the Java 1 site, there's right after the conference we publish all the media like a lot of conferences do, and if you weren't able to attend, you can still get the value of the slides and the presentation materials. And so you might want to take a look for Mark Schoenfold and look up his. I think he had something on fuzzing.
Okay. Thanks for your talk.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Privileged to be here.